life is a combination of both. And that's where we get stuck. So many of my clients and people that I train, we want to get everything just settled and finally get it under control, and then we'll be good, right? But instead, life is a series of waves. And so we want to be able to ride them when it's easier and practice bravery when it's calm.
Today on Obsessed, you are going to get obsessed with your life. You are going to understand the power of life, death, trauma, victories, shame, success, family, relationships, love, hate, and so much more. Start leading your life as a warrior. You have the keys to live the life you never dreamt of. It's time to stop making excuses and start getting obsessed with your life. Obsessors, today there is a sweet treat and a bit savory treat. We have Pamela Brinker here. She's amazing. She's become an amazing friend of the Obsessed podcast. She is the author of Conscious Bravery, Caring for Someone with Addiction, but her vast knowledge goes even further and deeper, just in times of challenges, in times of strife, in times when we don't think we have enough as ourselves. We're going to learn so much about not only Pamela Brinker herself, but how to build that resilience, how to create the life that we know we're meant for. So I'm going to say a big welcome to our dear friend, Pamela Brinker. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Mika. It's just a delight to be here.
We're excited to have you. And since you're on Obsessed, what are you obsessed about, Pamela?
I'm obsessed about braveology, about bravery. Braveology, yes. As much as I love your podcast, Obsessed, there's also a podcast called Ologies. And so I want to be on it. And Allie Ward runs a great podcast, as you two do, along with your partner, your triad partner. But she asks a lot of ologists to come on. And I wanted to come on as the braveologist because I'm all about bravery.
Have you pitched her, or are you going to send her a copy of this episode, Pamela?
That may be the thing. But Jules, I got to give you credit because you helped me get braveologist as a URL.
That is brilliant. You are a braveologist. What is a braveologist, by the way, in your definition?
Someone who not just trains in bravery, but can activate bravery as the situation calls for and do whatever's needed. And so we train consciously with awareness, with aliveness in everything, through the calm moments, through the troubling times, through, as you were saying, Jules, the challenges, whether it's a parent with Alzheimer's or a child that's really sick, or someone that you care about or love who has a substance use disorder, an SUD, or an addiction, or a mental health challenge. There's so many things that are so hard in life. And so to me, I'm obsessed with bravery, conscious bravery, because it's the one single thing that each one of us need every single day.
I love that you said that. And you also just said that there's so many things in life that are hard. Do you believe that life is meant to be easy or hard?
Life is a combination of both. And that's where we get stuck. So many of my clients and people that I train, we want to get everything just settled and finally get it under control, and then we'll be good, right? But instead, life is a series of waves. And so we want to be able to ride them when it's easier and practice bravery when it's calm in the easier times. But we want to train our innate bravery, the bravery we were born with, so that it becomes instinctual during the devastations. So I'd say it's both.
Have you noticed that for some people, and I don't want to generalize and say most, do you feel like is instinctual for the constant need to control? Especially when trauma happens, things happen out of our control, that fight or flight or freeze mode kicks in, that we just want to control everything. We want to have a set routine, and we expect that for the people around us. And if something is changed or altered, even the living room, if that is changed in a different way, different pattern, for some people I've noticed it struck fear in their partner. When their partner got home, they're like, you're no longer working in the painting in the living room, and I'm so used to your painting being there. And then she goes, but I thought you'd want me to work in the, be able to have the living room clean. And then now I'm working in a studio. And then the partner that just got home is like now a little more, feels a loss of control and feels fear. Where do you see the shift? Is there a shift?
Mm-hmm. And you're brilliant. You're bringing up several important examples because you mentioned the fight or flight or curl up in a ball and feign death response that we all have. And so that's our sympathetic nervous systems that kick in, even if it is just something small, like living room furniture being rearranged or difficult weather, right? But we want to be able to calm that sympathetic nervous system, to reset the vagus nerve really is what it's about. Although I don't talk about that in the book because that's more clinical language. But we want to be able to calm ourselves down, breathe consciously, and have an array of tools at our repertoire so that we can handle whatever comes our way and not define ourselves by our situations or our circumstances. I'm sitting here looking at you two, your beautiful faces. And most of us, when a challenge arises, that's what we do. We connect with somebody's face, right? We look at the other person and we wonder, oh, how are they doing? Are they upset? What's going on? Did my partner like the way I rearranged the living room? But we want to be able to, instead of looking at someone else or defining ourselves based on our situation or our circumstances, we want to be able to first pause and come within and into our own energy space. And I teach that in workshops and I teach it in the book. It's the chapter on beyond mindfulness, whole being awareness. You're talking about several things again, Mika, but we want to be able to have tools at the ready to help us quiet and pause so that we can move out of that activation mode where we want to react and actually know how to ground, how to settle down. Because there's all this talk about get grounded, take 3 deep breaths, but taking 3 deep breaths doesn't really help us to get grounded unless we're consciously aware and unless we're activating some other things in the zone of our experience, like we're tapping into other parts of us, not just our thoughts or our hearts.
I love that. And by the way, obsessors, Pamela is a licensed psychotherapist, if you're wondering. And this is so fascinating to me because people just speak of grounding or people speak, of take 3 deep breaths. Yes, it can maybe help momentarily, but we want the long-term fix, if you will. And this speaks also, and Mika and I were having a conversation the other day about how everybody needs a therapist and why are therapists taboo if they are, I know at some point, but is it because we feel that there is something wrong with us that we have to go out and ask for help? Tell us, Mika and I should probably have a couple therapy session with you. The dirt's going to come out, right, Mika?
Yeah, we wanted to.
All about
there
me.
Is no dirt.
Just about me. Like she's so bossy. No, but seriously, okay. I know I just power punched you with a lot of different questions, but why do Mika and I need a therapist?
Therapy is such a powerful venue for change. And you all say on your show, which I love, that we are obsessed humans on the verge of change. If we want to be able to handle the unknowns in life, don't you all think that we want to be able to flow with change better? Right. And so why not partner with someone just like a lot of us get massage or a lot of us get a pedicure. We're not so bad at asking for help in those regards. But when it comes to really getting vulnerable, we haven't been taught in our society that it's strong to be vulnerable. And through our vulnerability, we can be stronger. Thank goodness for people like Brene Brown who are doing all the research to help us see that vulnerability and strength go together and tenderness and assertiveness go together. And we can learn that in therapy. So I'm so obsessed with therapy as well. And that's really why I came about writing this book, Conscious Bravery, because the tools that I needed when my husband died, my kid's stepfather died 12 years ago, weren't available in just one book. And so I did go to different kinds of therapy and acupuncture and chiropractic, all different kinds of therapy. But what I settled in doing was starting to reapply a lot of the things that I taught my own clients and modify them for myself. And that's what we can do when we go into therapy. We want to find someone who's a therapist who really has expertise in the areas that we need help with. Like if we need help with trauma, we want to find somebody who's really good with trauma because that is just so difficult and heavy. one of the recent therapies that's come about in the last 15 years or so is somatic therapy, getting into our bodies to help us move through trauma. Because as you all know, and all of your listeners, some things just don't have words. Some things need sounds, like we might need to growl when we're thinking about or reflecting upon something really traumatic that happened to us. There may not be words for it. We may need to see it as a color or a non-color. So one of the therapies that I'm trained in is somatic work, so that people can not just talk from their minds about their feelings and get into their hearts, but we also get into our bodies. And so I might ask someone to make a feeling that they have bigger. Like if they're saying, my heart feels so tight and raveled, it's all tight like a ball of yarn. And so I might say, can you make that bigger? Can you see what it needs? And so our bodies lead us. And a lot of us have read Bessel van der Kolk's book, Your Body Keeps the Score, and some of those kinds of books around trauma and different kinds of therapy. So anyway, that's another kind of long answer to your question, but therapy is so crucial. If all of us could just see it as not just talking to a friend, but doing a whole soul makeover, or doing whatever it is we need that we're ready for. If you're not ready for a whole soul makeover, you don't have to sign up for that. If you just need some nurturing and some hope, then look for a therapist that can help walk alongside you for that. That's part of what therapy's for, is kindness and compassion and understanding, gaining insight. I see it as a sacred profession.
Oh, it's great. It makes me think of this. For people that they're not considering therapy right now, but they're kind of interested because they do feel that there is an imbalance going on, and maybe they feel in some way a victim of their life. They feel like they're not in control of their life. They feeling like they're lacking freedom, and they are justified in so many ways because their partner, there's a issue at home and it's been brewing for some time between them and their mate. They're feeling like they're being taken advantage of at work, and they're feeling like they don't have a friend, and they're feeling like everyone is taking advantage of them and that no one genuinely, sincerely cares. So this keeps growing and growing year after year. They're not saying anything, but therapy may not be something that they're considering right now. They're probably feeling like they don't have time, or maybe they'll do it next year. But what can you say to this person now who isn't thinking of therapy? How do you think they can actually start to begin to make some shifts in their life to be able to manage, or help them kind of open up from this moment of feeling really tight and feeling squeezed?
Well, therapy doesn't necessarily mean we need to sign up for a lifetime or even sign up for 3 months, even though a lot of therapy goes better that way. We can start with a small step, right? We can just go meet with somebody one time and see how we feel about it. In other words, look at our situation on a continuum. Like you were saying, it may have been growing for years. So it's going to take some time to sort through it and gain insight and decide what we want to do about what's going on in our lives or what's happened in our pasts. But it's such a privilege to work with a really good therapist. And there thankfully are a lot of really good ones out there. And so people can go to the Psychology Today website, to the therapist directory, and look there. And there are some other resources. You listeners can just Google it. But maybe just be tender and compassionate with yourself initially and say, hey, I have this awareness that I need something. I'm just going to take one small step. I'm going to go online and send an email or make a phone call and just interview somebody for 15 minutes. Most therapists give a 3, 10, or 15-minute phone call so you can hear their voice, see if they resonate with you. Because therapy can be life changing. Just like having a best friend, right? Most of us have had really dear friends in our lifetime that have helped us find our way. And we're not meant to do this alone. And so one of the things I teach in my workshops and is in my book too, I have a whole chapter called Be a Tall Tree, Ask for Help. Because I see us as tall trees with deep roots. But the way we can grow and shift and expand and change isn't by depending solely upon ourselves. It's through authentic connection with somebody else and with something greater too. nature or God or the universe. And so I call this the triad of connection, that we want to become aware of ourselves from within, look at our essence, to have insight about what's going on with us, understand our traumas, but we want to also have authentic connection with someone else and other people. And a therapist who really knows you and understands you can be just like a gem. And then we want to have authentic connection with something greater. We live in this expansive universe, right? So we're not here alone. And when we have all three, then we have a really strong platform to stand on. But if we're only leaning on one, like if we're only depending upon ourselves, we're going to be under-resourced. We are going to deplete. And since a lot of our listeners are women, I want to encourage you all, do not deplete. I've done it. I've been there. I'm sure you have too, Jules and Mika. So, we want to be able to resource with someone else and then with something else that's greater. And then we can ground and we can handle almost anything if we have a lot of different tools at the ready in our repertoire.
And these are really amazing tips about how to find the right one. But what are the tips like if you find the wrong one? Because I've been to therapy. Let's just put it out there to the universe. There's no shame in the mental health game. Number one. Number two, I've had a couple, I haven't had that many therapists, but I know that the majority of them, maybe this makes it sound like I've had 800 therapists, but a lot of them, I couldn't connect with. I didn't feel like they understood me. And how do you kind of maneuver around that? Because you feel like you're stuck with that person, and like a doctor, if you will.
Yes. It's such an important question, but you just gave two great answers, Jules. If you feel like they understand you, listen to that. Maybe even ask them, do you understand me? We forget that we can ask our therapist questions. Do you empathize with me? You really seem to, because we all want empathy. That's one of the main things I think we want. But if you don't really want empathy, if you want solutions, maybe make a list before you go of what is it I want from a therapist.
Do you need to like your therapist in order to feel empathy? Do you need to like them?
I believe so. I believe you need to like them at least a little bit. Because I've had great therapists and I've had some average ones and I've had a couple that were, and I didn't like them. I couldn't relate to them. I didn't trust them. Trust is another thing. If they make you feel safe, that is crucial, right? We need to talk about some of the deepest things that are secrets. That's part of what people tell me in therapy sessions or in coaching. They tell me their secrets.
I feel like I could tell you anything right now, Pamela.
You can. And I'll pick you up and hold you if possible too, which is another thing.
Well, we don't want to feel judged either, right?
No.
Right now, Pamela is cradling Jules. Jules is being cradled.
Well, back in the day, in the whatever, I've been a therapist 31 years. In my early days as a therapist, it wasn't done to go sit next to your client and put your arm around them. It wasn't done very often, at least. But I was in a peer supervision group and I said, some of my clients have anorexia or bulimia. They need to be held. I want to ask them, can I hold them? And we all decided, yeah, let's try it. And now it's done all the time, right? Because why not? Why does a therapist have to be this separate person that's all tight-lipped and says, tell me about your father?
I'm laying on the sofa.
Right. No, well, if you like psychoanalysis, that's still done. There's nothing wrong with that too.
Psychoanalysis.
It's just that let's make ourselves be real and let's look for therapists that are real. So I'd say make a list of things you want, and they may just be 5 things. I want to feel safe. I want to be able to trust my therapist. I want to make sure they understand me. I want to make sure they have skills and they teach me things, because I believe therapy should be actionable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
yes, that's another thing.
I don't think they should just
I want answers and I want results.
Yes.
If I go to a therapist.
So I like to write up treatment plans with my clients, and they may not always be very long. They might be 3 things. Like, I want to decide about this relationship I'm in, since you mentioned that earlier. Mika, I want to decide about what I'm going to do in this relationship a year from now. Mm-hmm. I want to know what I feel 4 months from now. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that most of us really struggle with. We don't know exactly what we feel sometimes. And so we want to be able to explore that and get better at knowing what we feel, and then get better at knowing what to do about what we feel. Mm-hmm. Set a boundary or respond or make a change, right?
I also like that idea, as before we jumped on, we were just raving about conscious bravery and a companion journal. I think something like a side table therapist action plan so people can write them for themselves. I think that would be an amazing book, by the way.
Thank you. That's a great idea. But yeah, people can get my book. Conscious Bravery is basically the pillars of what we all need, both in therapy and in life, because therapy should be like life. We're going to practice in our therapy sessions what we actually want to do in our everyday lives. In my book, I talk about some of the most foundational therapeutic tools, like befriend all of your feelings, not just happy, sad, and angry, because angry can even feel pretty comfortable for a lot of us. Make friends with our shame. Ask our shame, what are you telling me? What gift have you brought me? And then we want to become comfortable with discomfort. Not like we're seeking it out, because there's already enough pain and suffering in the world. But we have to become comfortable with discomfort, or we'll want to use a substance or a behavior or something to run from what we're experiencing. But instead, we want to be able to hold space for our discomfort and even our devastations, to be able to stay present.
And Pamela, how do we become comfortable with discomfort? Because as a society, do you think most of us are comfortable with discomfort? And how do we get to that point?
Love it. I agree. Most of us are not very comfortable with discomfort, and I believe in laughing. As you can tell, I'm a pretty vibrant, joyous person, but lots of times we laugh off our discomfort like, oh, that didn't bother me. I'm fine. But so we have to practice. We want to practice in the calm moments, when we're doing yoga or when we're meditating or when we're hanging out with our kids and they say something that kind of triggers us or makes us feel agitated. So we notice it. We tune into our experience and we just stay with it for a minute without reacting. So we practice becoming more comfortable with discomfort all the time. We notice when we have a thought that says, you aren't doing well enough. You're just a loser. And we see that as a judgment that's actually trying to override some aspect of discomfort that we're experiencing right now by putting ourselves down, as if that's going to help, right? So I believe that we're all born with the seeds of bravery. We're all born with the seeds of being a good lover or a loving mom or a friend, but we have to cultivate them. And similarly, we cultivate becoming better at handling overwhelm and discomfort. So it's like a garden that we tend. We practice with the vegetables that are nice to pick off the vine, and we practice hoeing and doing the hard work and weeding. We do it all.
And for someone who just emanates joy and radiates just such a peaceful energy, your life has not always been super duper easy. And I just want to point this out because it is your story, and where you are is not where you have been. If you want to share a little bit.
Thank you, Jules. Yeah, 12 years ago, my kid's stepfather, a man whom I loved very, very much, died from brain cancer. And we found out a year and 3 months before he passed that he was going to die. He had an incurable brain cancer, a glioblastoma. And so that year I was just racing. My adrenals were firing, trying to partner with my kids, who were both teenage boys at the time, and trying to really be there for them. But then when my husband passed, the unexpected happened, and I literally became hopeless for several days at a time here and there. And I remember walking around the house and saying, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then I noticed I was saying that. And somehow grace would have it. And I remembered something Cheryl Strayed wrote in her book, Tiny Beautiful Things. And she said that we parents don't have the luxury of despair. And that really hit me in my whole being, in my heart, my mind. My intuition said it was right in the energy space around me. And I looked around my house and I said, I've got these two sons who need me. I've got to be that tall tree and be vibrant and show them how to do this. But here's the challenge. They were struggling so much. They were both using alcohol and substances. And within about 3.5, 4 years, they became addicted to methamphetamines. And so our worlds just changed that whole time. Right after my husband passed, and then when my sons started turning to substances, they were initially using amphetamines and having trouble at school and grieving. And nobody wants to become an addict. No one wants to become addicted to a substance or a behavior. No one wants major mental health challenges. And so as Grace would have it there too, I had been a triathlete, but I decided I've got to learn how to be tender and compassionate and listen. And so I started listening more and still making mistakes, kind of floundering as a single mom. But I really saw them with a lot more compassion over time. I saw that they didn't want to turn to substances as the answer to their pain. They were grieving far more than I knew. And so I began to perceive that I was walking alongside them in the wilderness with them as a family. And both of my sons ended up going to 2 different wilderness therapy programs because I am a big believer in therapy and I wanted them away from screens. And for 3 months at a time, they learned to meditate, do yoga, to make their own fires and shelters. And they were in peer therapy all day long. And we wrote letters back and forth. And I worked my butt off on myself. And so did their dad, my former husband. We all worked on ourselves and we changed our family system. But it was hard. You're talking about being in the trenches, and I really was because I didn't know what I was doing. And so that's when I learned to ask for more help and see different kinds of therapists that really helped guide me. And they were guided as well with things they never expected to learn to rely upon, like having their own therapist. With a mom who's a therapist, your kids don't always want to have a therapist.
That your story is it's remarkable, Pamela. It's really remarkable. And something that was profound and what I heard you say was that you started to have compassion for your 2 boys and say, no one wakes up one day and says, I want to be an addict. I want to be addicted to meth. I want to be addicted to alcohol. No one does. And, and I know that our wonderful episode, we'll have to have you back again. I know it's coming to a close, but most of us do the opposite. We look at someone who has the drug addiction, someone who's abusing alcohol. We look at it as you're ruining the family. Compassion is the last thing that we have for them, whether it's our partner or the kids. This is an embarrassment. You're embarrassing us. Those are the first things we think about ourselves, and we feel insecure. We no longer have security. And what you said was that the first thing that you did was not look at them for them to work on themselves, but you worked on you and you looked at them with compassion. So I want to commend you for opening that safety net for your boys to feel that from you.
Yeah, but I'm just obsessed with Pamela Brinker, her story of struggles, strife, triumph, and probably a little dabble of struggle and strife intermixed with happiness and joy. She's so fascinating. Her energy is so palpable. It's just like a warm blanket, a hug that you want to talk more and more. The fact that I was not paying attention at all and realized that we had to wrap this baby up because she is so engaging. And guys, if anything, besides becoming obsessed with Pamela Brinker, go check out our book, Conscious Bravery. We're going to have all the information for you in the show notes. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, review, show us a little love here. We need a little love. And remember, get obsessed with your life.